Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, brought to you by Norman Goodfellows. Welcome to Cebulle at the African Pride Hotel. Now, if you know the iconic hotel at the Melrose Arch Hotel, you'll know that it didn't always look like this. It used to be a bit darker. It wasn't quite so welcoming and appealing and light and engaging, and that has changed dramatically. Across the whole hotel, there's a fabulous bistro about 40 yards that way, but it's this hotel that has caught my attention immediately, partly because they've got a really cool sommelier called Ossie, who you're going to be meeting a little later in the show, also because they've got an absolutely fantastic cellar, a cellar awash not just with wines I really want to try, but with vintages that I'm so excited to have a look at. Not just a great vintage like a 15 or an 09 or an 03, go all the way back to 76 to 78, the year of my birth, to the early 80s, wine that's clearly been brought together with a sense of the heritage of South African wine in mind. So that is something I'm going to be exploring today, as well as the food with Salumi and finding out exactly what the name of the restaurant means. But before I do that, I've got some work to do in terms of giving you some wine experience. Now, later on in the show, I'll be talking you through why I'm actually at the hotel. The WSET 3 examinations and lectures take place here, and I'm in the middle of those. It's head-spinning stuff, but it's really interesting. And I wanted to give you some insight into what WSET is, what Level 3 involves, and why it might be something that appeals to you as a wine lover. Before we do that, though, a journey through my local Norman Goodfellows, but not the normal one. A gentleman called Bernard, who's the winemaker at Zorgvliet, is a guy with a rich history of winemaking. He's made wine in all sorts of places, from Hamilton Russell to Vilafonte to Flagstone to Tokara, stints in California. He's been across South Africa and beyond, and it makes for a really interesting journey. So we wandered the aisles of Norman Goodfellows, found some wine from his previous places of employment, and through that told the story of one of South Africa's great wine wanderers. One of the joys of the South African wine industry is meeting winemakers and discovering their story. The story that's not just about where they're currently making wine, but where they've been before. And often it's not just all over South Africa if it's a local winemaker, but all over the world. And that speaks to the winemaker I'm catching up with today. In and amongst the rails and rails of wine at Norman Goodfellows, it's Bernard from Zorgvliet. Bernard.
Hey Dan.
How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Yourself?
I'm great. Do you also, when you walk into somewhere like this, get both excited and slightly intimidated? Excited because it's loads of great wine, and intimidated because there's just so much to choose from?
Of course, you know, there was a time when I started making wine where you could certainly find poor wines, but definitely not today anymore. You know, it's the South African wine industry's upped the game so much. It's nearly impossible to find a poor bottle of wine on the shelves nowadays.
And these are wines that you know particularly well. If I have got a little nerves but excitement, you have nerves, excitement and nostalgia, because you've made wine for half the people in this room at the moment. You've got this terrific story that's meandered through different parts of South Africa and a touch of California. Yep. And it all goes back to the very start. And I think I've spotted a bottle of wine that might be quite familiar to you.
So there's some Flagstone here. There's a Cabernet. I remember this quite well. It's called the Music Room. I finished my degree, my winemaking degree at Stellenbosch University, and you know, I was a well-rounded student, so I still had some subjects to finish in my fifth year, and I also needed a job, and went begging to Bruce Jack at Flagstone. At that stage, they had a beautiful little winery in Cape Town, in the waterfront, and he gave me an opportunity to help him out with the vintage. So, yeah, exciting times. I remember he sourced grapes from about 50 different vineyards in the Cape. Absolutely a pioneer. You think about the Swartland and all the young guns and all the guys doing all these wonderful things and buying parcels of grapes. That was quite recent, but I'm talking about 2000, 2001. There were people already doing it, and that really opened my eyes to the beautiful potential and all the great vineyards that we have in the country.
It's such an important part of any winemaker's story, that first gig, that first job, that doesn't just tell you, maybe I can actually do this, but really grounds you in the day-to-day business of becoming a winemaker.
Yeah, and I think what I also learned from watching Bruce is it's one thing making the wine, but the story is as important. And that's what he's also so brilliant at, is telling stories. Each of his wines always had a beautiful story. So I've always carried that with me, So, yeah.
Well, Bruce is a wonderful storyteller, and he kicked you off on a terrific story. That's chapter 1. Let's see what the next one is. Right, so the next one we're looking for, if memory serves, that would be Hamilton Russell, but somebody we now know at Ataraxia.
Yep. So I got a position. This was after I did a few stints in California. I came back to South Africa and landed an assistant winemaker's job with Kevin Grant at Hamilton Russell. A completely different experience to Flagstone.
You got there grounded in a few things, the art of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir in particular, which has caused a lot of stress for many winemakers over the year, but also the chance to experiment in such different terroir in the Hamilton Valley.
And that was completely what that whole establishment was about. It was being true to the soils, and the beautiful thing at Hamilton Russell was working in that cellar, is to seeing how the different vineyards on different soil types express the soils, and that was again very eye-opening. And then of course the whole branding and the marketing was done in a very elegant and a very sophisticated way. Anthony Hamilton Russell is an absolute master at showcasing his brand, and from Flagstone, where it was all very hip and modern, going to Hamilton Russell, which was much more old school or old world in style, it's really exciting.
Anthony is one of the great figures of South African wine. So it is the man you worked under in Kevin Grant. And we know him now at Ataraxia as one of our Cape Winemakers Guild members. What's always struck me about Kevin is that almost supernatural feel for making Chardonnay. There's something about Kevin Grant and Chardonnay that seemed to be just meant to go together. Did you get that feel when you worked with him?
Yeah, I was still finding my feet, and I was really just looking up to him and learning. He definitely had a feel for the, for elegance in wine, and he was always talking about an iron fist in a silk glove, and
he's used that on the show before.
Yeah, exactly. So that whole concept in wine, where it's almost less is more, where you don't always have to scream, don't always have to make wines that are overly expressive. Sometimes they have to be a little bit reserved, and be pretty and beautiful in that way. That's what stuck with me.
So you have this opportunity to work at Hamilton Russell. It's already at that stage one of the most exciting properties in South Africa. Kevin Grant, one of the great winemakers. What possessed you to say, no, I've had enough of this, I want to do something else?
Well, when I started with Kevin, he told me, look, I'm going to give you this opportunity for 2 years, but then I'm going to kick you out. Because, he really believed in me moving on and gaining more experience. Of course, he also moved on to Ataraxia, and I wanted to travel, so I jumped onto a sailing yacht, and headed to the Indies, and sailed all the way up from the Comores to Seychelles, and ended up in the Maldives. I had this dream of sailing all the way around into Indonesia, and then finding my way down to Australia, and then doing some vintages there. But then, I had a girlfriend, and she after 3 months she gave me quite a stern warning.
An ultimatum.
Yeah, said, listen, I need you back here, and it lured me back to South Africa, and so I needed a job quite urgently, and through surfing and bumping into Miles Mossop at the Vintner Surf Classic, I asked him if he could hook me up with a job. So that led me to Tokara. So
And that's another. I mean, that stage Miles is still a little younger, but was already one of the young superstars of South African winemaking. And this again, I mean, Hamilton Russell is right up there. But to then go on to Tokara, you're getting some pretty plum jobs.
Yep. So this was all a very, very new establishment. This was now 2005. And it was a brand new winery. I wanted to experience working in a flashy new winery with all the bells and whistles, because up till then I'd worked in not rundown, but not as modern wineries. So they had all these new vineyards. They had a pretty big budget, and so it was very exciting. I didn't have a grand title there, but I certainly worked with a great team and great fruit, and it led me to Vilafonte. So working at Tokara, I bumped into Zelma. They at that stage had not built a winery yet, so they were renting some cellar space at Tokara. I got to know her through running around the winery, and they needed someone to look after their wines, and they needed a resident winemaker. So she approached me, and of course, as you said, I had a bit of Californian experience. I knew a little bit about the style of wines that they had envisioned, and I got on board. So for the first 2 vintages, I think I still made the wine for Vilafonte at Tokara, and then I had the great privilege to help them build a winery in Stellenbosch in 2007. That was very exciting.
And to work with somebody like Zelma, not everybody will immediately know the name if they're not in the wine industry. But if you are in the wine industry, this kind of Lionel Messi, this is Cheslin Colby, this is Sia Turf. She really is right up there with the best of the best.
Absolutely, very well known in California, and one of the first female winemakers to really, create a big presence or be very present in the Californian wine industry. She was actually brought out to South Africa in the 90s, both her and her husband Paul Fries, to consult and to do some lectures in South Africa. They fell in love with South Africa and eventually went into partnership with Mike and started this beautiful project, Vilafonte. Very focused it's a super professional people. Phil Fries was in charge of all the viticulture, and that's a lot of winemakers. Most winemakers always talk about where wine is really made, and that the precision viticulture that we work with at Vilafonte, it was just the next level. Completely different kind of thing. And then the winemaking, especially the blending part, Zelma taught me so much about blending and how you use different wines as building blocks to arrive to completeness.
So Vilafonte, surely there can't be anywhere else before Zorgvliet, but there is one more, and it's quite an important one. So you've had this extraordinary list of places you've worked. You've been at Vilafonte, and you've been at Tokara, and you've been at Hamilton Russell, and then you decide to make the move to Noble Hill, not in the same bracket in terms of a well-known and established space. Why that move?
Well, it was a big challenge. Firstly, I thought I needed something very challenging. At that stage, I already worked at Vilafonte for 5 years. So what really lured me was the opportunity to farm. Before, I'd always been on the fringe in the winery, and Noble Hill gave me the opportunity to run both the vineyards and the cellar. So we had new plantings that we had to develop, and I had to basically run the day-to-day farming on the farm, which I always wanted to do, because that's the essence of wine. That's really where it starts. So 3 years there in Simmelsburg Pole. Really good site. We made some really nice wines, and I believe since then that they've just gone from strength to strength.
So just the 3 years then, but I get a sense that in terms of your broader education as a winemaker, this was crucial.
Yeah, no, I really I needed that stepping stone into management and running. You know, really taking tough decisions. It really formed me.
So time at Flagstone, time at Hamilton Russell, time at Tokara, time at Vilafonte, time at Noble Hill. What does that all add up to? Zorgvliet and some wines I'm ready to try. And so we get to Zorgvliet, and this journey finds the home in which you're currently in. Why Zorgvliet, and how did this move come about?
Well, I remember my wife once asked me if I could choose two places in South Africa where I would like to work. I named two, and one of them was Zorgvliet. And
Why was that?
it was just because, well, I knew the previous winemaker quite well, and I had visited the estate a few times, and you know that area, the Banghoek, it's got its own, you know, appeal. It's just this beautiful wine growing area, and I just always thought that would be the perfect place to not to finish it all off, but to not to end my journey certainly, but from everything I've learned, that's like the perfect place, perfect climate, perfect soils to go and kind of showcase them. Yeah. So anyway, I got offered a position there, and yeah, I jumped at it. I absolutely grabbed with both arms. Yeah, that was end of 2013.
So, given your relatively short stints a lot of other places, you've been there now for over a decade. Obviously, something's going right with Bernard and Zorgvliet.
Yeah, you know, I think it's such a great place. It's a family-owned business. I think that's important. I for a long time worked in non-family-owned operations, and I think there's a absolute there's a sense of home there for me. It's that. So, you know, winemaking is one thing, but the people you work with is very important as well. So I found a home there. But the site, the terroir, the Banghoek ward in Stellenbosch, it's got such an exceptional thing to it. It's just that it's got that perfect mixture between you know, not being too cool or too warm. It's got the perfect macroclimate there. So it's perfectly suited to Bordeaux varieties, and yeah, I've always been allowed to fairly free reign as far as the wine styles, and yeah, so it's really allowed me to stretch my wings and do you know, make the wines that I believe in. So yeah, so they've always, if you look at the whole Zorgvliet range, the focus has always been on more on fruit and on purity than maybe some of the other establishments I worked at, where it might have been a little bit about other stuff. At Zorgvliet, it's always about expressing the terroir and being true to the variety. And that's the kind of style of wine, that's the winemaking style that comes naturally to me. So, yeah.
Now, you're in a part of the world where Cabernet Franc has really found its feet. Look at people like Oldenburg, head up to the Brothers just above, and that great view, and some wonderful Rainbow's End.
Yeah.
You've got Cabernet Franc here, which is the one you've opted to sample with me. Yeah. And I'm very happy because I love Cabernet Franc. Give us a sense in this glass what this says about two things: what it says about Bernard the winemaker, and what it says about Zorgvliet and its terroir.
Well, I have to throw another name there. Roux, of course, very well known as a big Cabernet Franc producer. He was the first winemaker at Zorgvliet, and so he believed very strongly in Cabernet Franc in that area. So a lot of the vineyards that I'm working with today was
the legacy of Brewer.
Was developed and planted in his time. So the first few vintages. And that was because I was told by other people in the industry. I really opted for a very opulent style, very rich, quite ripe, modern style, and got bored with it quite soon. And through the last, say, 7 years, I've edged back on on the ripeness levels, and we've done a lot of work in on the vineyards. It's a variety that is so sensitive to the viticulture. If you get it wrong, you get it wrong very badly. It's not so that perfect line between being herbaceous and green. That's kind of the edge where I'm walking with the Cabernet Franc now. I love herbaceousness in wine, but not vegetative character. So the herbal element in wine is what really fascinates me, and Cabernet Franc really allows you to kind of showcase it.
I'm not sure a line of endorsement will necessarily make the Zorgvliet marketing going forward, but I will say with a fair amount of surety that Zelma and Kevin and Miles and Mike and everybody you've worked with would be very happy to pour a glass of this. And I think that speaks to this incredible journey you've had. I don't want to terrify the family owners by asking you where the next step of the journey may be, but I suspect there's still a long run to come at Zorgvliet, because you're obviously really enjoying it, but I think also taking all of these lessons you've learned and all of these journeys that you've had, and you've woven them into a really happy and comfortable space. So it's been really fun reliving your wine journey with you and having a bit of nostalgia, paying tribute to some other great brands, but also really enjoying your current one as well.
Thank you, Dan.
Cheers. So that's Bernard's quite remarkable story, travelling not just all over South Africa, but spending some time in California, and now finding himself at Zorgvliet for a decade and counting, not just making some really cool wine in the Bunnock Valley, but clearly really enjoying himself and taking advantage of this rich history and adventure he's had through the wine industry. Now, somebody else who's having a bit of an adventure in the wine world is my guest here at Sibule, the restaurant at the hotel in Melrose Arch, the African Pride, because he might have kicked off in Malawi, but he's now found himself very much at home here in South Africa. Ossie, lovely to be here. And I'm so impressed with what you've done, because the restaurant's just looking so good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tell me first of all a little bit about yourself. How does a guy from Malawi end up as a top sommelier in Johannesburg?
So it's a little bit more funny, but I'll just take you through. So when I came in South Africa in 2007, I used to work as a garden boy, but my former boss used to tell me to go to school and do something and study something, of which I didn't like studying. You know, when you come, you just want to get some money, you know. So then my boss pushed me to study, but I couldn't manage to do anything, and I started doing IT. But unfortunately, I didn't finish my IT. And then I just ended up doing my coffee. So I used to be one of the coffee barista at Warm & Glide once, but it was back then in 2012 up to 2016. And then 2017, I moved into wine, and I found wine was just like one of the interesting parts that I can actually enjoy as well.
And you're clearly loving it. I think we first bumped into each other at Proud Mary. You've now got this as your home, and it's a really cool place to call home. Tell me about Sibule, the name, what it means, and a little bit more about this restaurant.
So Sibule is actually like a Swahili name, which translates to the living room. So I can say this is my living room. So I love being here. As you can see, my beautiful office here. So I love being here.
It's an office with a terrific collection of wine. I've already had a look in, and we'll have a look in slightly more detail when the show wraps up a little later. But right now, it's the job of any great sommelier to bring together food and wine in concert. And that's what you've done here. I asked you for two things, Ossie. I asked you for a couple of great dishes and then a couple of wines that you felt did really well. Tell me about this first dish and what the wine is to go with it.
So the Shuna Tataki, as we know, that Shuna is actually going very well with some either white wine, or you can do it with the rosé. So that's why I selected the Fred and Rust, which is the Jesse. I think you know the background of the Jesse as well. So Jesse is the winemaker or the farm's first daughter, the first daughter's name. So they named after that, and it's quite a beautiful blend as well. And when I tried with my chef as well, we tried this wine with the Shuna Tataki. It went very well, so that's why I chose this wine for you today.
I love that you've done that, because not only do I think rosé goes so well with tuna generally, but also we don't often use it as a pairing.
It does quite very well with either salad. You can do it with the salad. You can also drink it when it's warm. That's one of the beautiful wine that you can enjoy as well.
All right, so here we go. Some nice fresh tuna tataki. Caught it hard to be put down this morning.
Enjoy.
Lovely and fresh, and one of the things the chefs avoided. Often when you get tuna in South Africa, it comes with 11 litres of soy sauce. This is a lot fresher.
More fresher, yes.
Which I think is going to speak beautifully to the rosé. Oh, savoury heaven, isn't it? It's a wine that's still got plenty of delicacy, but that doesn't mean it's lost the fruit. Sits in balance, as it does with this dish. This is a good call, Ossie.
Okay.
Oh, all right. Now, this is special and certainly a treat, but you've gone out of your way with my second dish because the bottle of wine that you've carefully caravaned to my right, it's almost older than I am, Ossie. This is something special.
Yeah, so this is one of my special wines. So as you can see, you can actually walk into my wine cellar and see the collection that I've made here. So mostly I do have some vintage wines from 1976 up to 2015. They're all not listed on the menu. But yeah, so today I just decided to give you this, but not only today, I always give this by the caravan. So I give people some different wines as well so that they can try something different.
It is the beauty of the caravan, something you would never have been able to do before. You can now give people access
now
to.
You can, yes.
Oh.
That's why now we want to do Cape Town in South Africa. I mean in Joburg. So it's going to be Cape Town in Joburg.
Cheers, Ossie.
Cheers.
While I try it, tell me a little bit about where this wine is for you. It's 42 years old
42
now.
years, yes.
What condition is it and what has kept it in that condition?
So my wine cellar actually is well built. So we've got a bit of some air conditioner. So everything is actually like the temperature in my wine cellar is beautiful. And also for this wine, when I tested it area first before I gave it to you, because I know that I've got quite a lot of these vintage wines, but before I give it to anyone, I have to test it myself first, and then I can approve that the wine is still fine. But also, as you can see now, the color is changed because, you know, once the wine is aging, the color also changes. And also the texture of the wines is quite different. You find quite a lot of some flavors that will be coming up on the palate as well. But it's one of the beautiful wines that I chose for you today to try with the lamb lard.
Well, the wine itself would have been fabulous. And again, you can taste that it's old. It's certainly got a bit of age to it, but nothing that's taking away from it. There's still that fruit there. You can still really enjoy the history of the wine.
Yeah, you can try that with the food. That's when now we can actually finish up everything and see.
So this being a lamb on a rack, this will have a fair bit of fat to it, a fair bit of flavour and umami to it. Why does that make it go so well with this wine for you?
So mostly I always go for the acidity that can actually cut through the fatness from the meat. But as we know that the wine, when it's aging, the acidity also comes down a bit. So it's not like too acidic, but actually the level of the acidity here is still much better that you can actually enjoy with the meat.
I think that acidity is such a good point to make because there is a lot of richness. I'm in a Greek family thanks to my wife. We eat a fair amount of lamb, and it can sometimes get a little bit overwhelming. And you get something to cut through it and give it some balance.
Yes.
It's very welcome.
Thank you.
This has been a wonderful snapshot, far too short. So I think the only thing I need to do here is to ask you to check your reservations book so I can come back. You've got some 78 Magnums from Jakobsdal, which
yes.
That's my birth vintage, so I always enjoy a 78. So that'll be next on my list. But I'll definitely be back because the food in itself is delightful. The wine has been superb. Together they've been great. And most importantly, there's a fantastic sommelier.
Thank you.
Like, it's been a joy. And in fact, the WSET process as a whole has been a joy. We've had some world-class lecturers, some really interesting wine, and the amount we've learned has both been invigorating, but also a reminder of just how much I didn't know when it came to the world of wine. Now, does that sound like something you'd like to do? Would you like to join the world of sommeliers like Ossie? Would you simply like to improve your own wine knowledge and understanding? Well, WSET is a fantastic platform, and level 3, which I'm doing, it's a little intimidating, but it's full of knowledge, full of interest. I highly recommend it, but I'll tell you what, why don't you judge for yourself? So normally this would be a glass of wine in my hand. Today it's actually a study aid because this is day 2 of my WSET 3 lectures, the Wine and Spirit Education Trust. It is a lot of hard work. We've been crammed full of learning, but it's also absolutely fascinating.
So level 3 is our kind of benchmark course. It's up a level from level 2, which I think is obvious, but it entails 15 hours of lectures covering the whole world of wine, still mainly focused on France, Italy, Spain, and Central Europe. You know, that's the historical background of the place of wine. And then we bring in all the other countries that are, you know, including South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, California, South America. And we look at the types of wines, the styles of wines that they're making, emulating the European counterparts, and in some places and in some cases, especially in the South African case, making unique styles of wines that have their own specific and unique signatures and a real sense of place. I got into this because I was an avid consumer and drinker of wines of the world and of South Africa. So from my point of view, it was really just an in-depth knowledge of how wines are made, where they're made, and why they taste like they taste. Translating this into the business world, the course is internationally recognized. It's offered in over 80 countries, and people across the world, employers, are more and more looking for these qualifications in their wine programs. So be it on luxury yachts, cruise liners, hotel chains, even retailers like supermarkets or specialist wine stores, places like your Norman Goodfellas and Port to Port would train their staff in these in our qualifications to give them more knowledge, background, and understanding of the wines of the world, how our wines in South Africa fit into those wines of the world, and really just understanding the labels, the quality, the style, and the nature of wine from different places on the planet made from different grape varieties.
So I don't come from the wine industry. I come actually from corporate. I've been studying wine part-time as a hobby for many, many years. And as of this year, I decided to take a massive jump, and I have embraced wine completely, started a wine and brandy blog, and I'm carrying on with my education, hence why I'm at this WSET 3 course.
I'm Tanita. I work for Spear Wine Farm, and I have a big passion in wine. And as you know, Spear is great on their sustainability and knowledge and educating their staff. So I'm very privileged to do my 3. I did the second course, and 3 is extremely tough, I must say. But yeah, it's just more broader knowledge, world wines, and educating myself.
It's intensive, I'm not going to kid you, but it's very exciting. And I think the opportunity of being able to taste all of these different wines, both local and international, and understanding all of it really develops your true understanding and passion of wine, and it gets you to, I guess, truly immerse yourself. And that's what I'm enjoying.
I think WSET overall, since, you know, from the level 2 up until 3, just the explanation on the wines, tasting through the wines, the level of information, it's just overwhelming and really exceeds the course.
It's going to take a lot of studying, I think, to get through this particular exams. We have been advised it's going to be a tough one. But I think the way the information is being given to us, in the way it's presented and the way the learning is coming through, for me personally, is working brilliantly.
Yeah, so we've got a company in Gauteng, VDP Distributors. We distribute wine, flavored syrups and coffee beans. We're the agents for the experts. But our wine journey started at the end of 2021, where we got our first pellet of wine in at November. And about just over 2 years later, now we're on about 14 farms that we represent in Gauteng. Initially, we thought wine would sell itself, but as you start tasting and learning, you start going on your own little adventure. And our wine manager, Deanne Vessels, she's been prominent on the WSET courses, and then got me to start following suit. And then slowly but surely, as everyone gets entangled in the wine, you taste the wine, you just want to learn more and more and more, and so that's why we're here now, trying to extend our knowledge. We also want to try offer a little bit more of that knowledge to our customers and training. So I think it goes hand in hand with the sales.
I'd recommend it to anybody that is passionate about wine, whether you're in the industry or not in the industry. I think it'll just give you such a wealth of, total understanding of all of the wine environments across the globe, New World, Old World. And should you want to travel, then you even more knowledgeable about what you're drinking, right? So absolutely, go for it.
So far, it's been extremely enjoyable. I don't think we've really tackled all the theory just yet. So I think we're mainly focusing on the tasting, getting all our notes going over there. But all the little tidbits that we've been getting from Andrew and Graham so far on the different regions and the areas there, I think it's going to have to sit both a little bit of tedious studying to get through, all those little fine details into our memory, right?
While doing my double set level 3, to give me enough knowledge, because at the moment I work in the cruise ship, Royal Caribbean, and we do a lot of wine tasting. So there's one time I was hosting a class. It was all about champagne. So with pretty much the knowledge that I have from a double set level 2, I personally thought that it wasn't enough, but that's why I was like, let me do my level 3 to get more knowledge and get more experience out of it, and then tell better stories. And yeah, so far I'm doing very good, and I'm also pursuing my Court of Masters introduction this September. So it's all about learning. You'll never stop learning.
Well, there's a glimpse of my WSET 3 journey so far. My head is still spinning. I have exams still to write. Will I pass? Well, I hope so. Many people have a second or third attempt at them. But whether I get through first time or not doesn't change the fact that I've already learnt so much, and it's been a fascinating journey. So go and have a look online at maybe level 1 if you're just starting out with wine, level 2 if you've got a reasonable amount of knowledge already, and if you're really fired up, or if a job in the wine world appeals, then level 3 and on to maybe even level 4 in a diploma is what awaits you should you have that interest. Now, just as I've learned so much with the WSET team, so I've learned an awful lot here today at the restaurant through Ossie and his team. Not just terrific food, but also this absolute gem of a cellar. And wandering through it, I found, as we mentioned earlier, some 78 Jacobsdahl, the year of my birth, a famous year. There's also some 76s if you want to go back a little further. Found some Baxberg from 2003, some older 8 cakes going back a few years, wine from not just the 2000s, but the 90s and the 80s as well, including this fabulous Dahlheim that has just in the last 20 minutes or so already opened up quite beautifully and revealed a wine that does a rich tribute to the kind of people who've worked through Dahlheim over the years, the Sterling family, Kevin Arnold, now you've got Bolango who's doing such a wonderful, wonderful job along with Rudolph. It's a great estate, some great wine, and a great man called Ossie who very kindly gave me some today. If you haven't been through to the African Pride Hotel and to the new restaurant Salumi, do come and check it out. The living room, if you translate it from Swahili, and it does have that warm, engaging, welcoming feel, together with this absolutely cracking wine cellar that I foresee me spending a little more time in. Now that does it for today. A big thank you to the hotel here, to Heinrich and his team, and to Ossie. Thanks too to the WSET team, and to Andrew in particular, leading our lecturers and giving us some fabulous insight into wine. And also thanks to Bernard from Zorgvliet, who told us his story through the medium of wine at Norman Goodfellows a little earlier on in the show. I'll be back again next week with another episode as my wine adventures continue, and hopefully by then I've learned a little more from WSET and maybe found some more wine to drink here as well. Have a great week. Keep drinking South African wine. This is Dan Really Likes Wine with Norman Goodfellows. Cheers.